Also, so I want to introduce Ted Stanley, who probably does not need any introduction to this audience. Thanks for coming here and giving us a talk about the entrepreneurship in anesthesiology.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to see if I can move the flag. I hope that doesn't upset too many people. Let's see. There's your advance. Yes, it's probably okay. While we're getting my slides ready, I wanted to say that Doug Rains is an example of a pretty successful innovator and entrepreneur. And my mission, my goal this morning is to tell you all, or try to convince you all, that we need many more people like Doug Rains, and that this is important for our specialty, that innovation and entrepreneurialism is extremely important because we need the new drugs and the new devices. So I'm hoping that at the end of this talk, that most of you will understand what innovation and entrepreneurship is and what it isn't, and that it's not easy, but you got to keep doing what he did, and that it's harder today. It is much harder today than it ever was, and I think I'm worried about that, and perhaps we, those of us in this room, can change this. Now I'm going to start this with a quote from our 26th president of the United States. I think this is the pointer, I'm not sure. Do you know what is the pointer here and what isn't? I don't want to, is it here? Okay, great, thank you very much. The 26th President of the United States, in the spring of 1899, in a very famous speech called the Stressful Life speech, uttered these words, which I'd like you to remember, if you can, during the remainder of my talk. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the great twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. This is what an entrepreneur is. You just heard this story. So, what is innovation? How is it different from invention? What is entrepreneurship? Innovation is the application of better solutions, the application of a new idea, which Dr. Rains had, for existing unknown or even unarticulated needs. Innovation occurs when more effective drugs, like Dr. Rains developed, more effective products, processes, services, technologies, or ideas are made available to us, to markets, to doctors, including anesthesiologists, to groups of people, to governments, to societies. This is innovation. 20 years ago, this did not exist, and it has dramatically changed all of our lives. That is innovation. The term innovation is usually defined as something very original, something very different. And as a result, it breaks into a group, a profession, a market. I don't think Doug's drug is yet approved, but hopefully it will be. And because it is so different, it will have an impact on what we do. Innovation is usually associated with new phenomena that are important in some way. In one sentence, then, innovation is something original, new and important in whatever field. In our case, it's anesthesiology that breaks into or obtains a foothold in that field. Innovation is different from invention. The idea was the invention. The application, the getting approval of this drug, this new thing, this new drug, this new device, it's different than the creation of the idea. It's the application. Innovation differs from improvement in that innovation refers to something very different instead of doing something a little better or a lot better. Innovation is the translation of the idea or the invention into a product or a service that has value and for which customers will pay in the future. To be called an innovation, an idea must be replicable and an economic cost and must satisfy a need. Some have said that research is the key to our future. I believe research, especially basic research, is really important and can produce valuable advances. But I believe most important changes in society, in what we do, in culture, in medicine, comes through innovation. In my opinion, the development and successful introduction of the potent halogenated inhaled anesthetics were important innovations in anesthesiology in our field. So was the use in my day of massive doses of intravenous morphine to produce a unconsciousness and safe anesthetic state for very, very sick patients when we didn't have the numbers of anesthetics that we have today. The successful introduction of spinal anesthesia was an important innovation in anesthesiology in the early days of the 20th century. So was the development, introduction, and the eventual acceptance of the endotracheal tube a little later in the 21st century. All of these anesthesia innovations were novel ideas when they were first introduced. Later, they all eventually changed and improved anesthesia care, sometimes very dramatically, after they were first understood and perfected. Innovations are generally divided into two general areas. The evolutionary innovations, which are generally smaller, continuous or semi-continuous changes that are brought about by incremental advances in technology, as opposed to the revolutionary innovations, which are sudden, sometimes very abrupt, and they are often very disruptive to what we are doing. The introduction and use of ether for anesthesia was a revolutionary innovation. The introduction and adoption of first halothane, and then enflurane, and isoflurane, and then sevoflurane, and desflurane are the evolutionary type of innovations that I've been talking about. Although revolutionary or disruptive ideas in technology are exciting and can lead to dramatic changes in medicine or anesthetic practice, smaller, more evolutionary changes or concepts can be as important or maybe even more important. What about entrepreneurs? What about the Doug Rains of the world? These are persons that are very, by nature creative. They're usually hugely self-motivated, with a powerful inner drive and the need to follow a passion. They are also great risk takers. Think of all the things that he had to do just to get that drug after 8 years where it is today. Innovation and entrepreneurialism is synonymous with risk-taking. Organizations and persons that create revolutionary products or technologies take the greatest risk because they create brand new products, brand new companies, often very untested. We still don't know about this drug. It may dramatically change what we do, and maybe it won't. We don't know that yet. Probably one of the most innovative persons in pharmacology was Dr. Paul Janssen. Dr. Janssen, between 1950 and 2000, created, studied, evaluated 140,000 new compounds in the laboratories in Belgium. He, more than any other creator of new drugs, had, in that period of time, 80 of those drugs approved by the FDA and European authorities. That's more than the next 5 greatest companies put together. And he did that, and many of those drugs were useful for us in anesthesiology. He's a great example of a very successful entrepreneur. We often hear about the entrepreneurial spirit. What is that? The entrepreneurial spirit is the forward thinking of entrepreneurs. They cultivate new ideas and inspire those around them to use innovation to discover new opportunities for new products, for new services, for anything that is new. Entrepreneurs show initiative that is self-motivated and based on their inner vision and their drive to take action. They are usually quite optimistic, they trust in themselves, and are usually very courageous. It is important to realize that not all entrepreneurs are successful. And even the most successful entrepreneurs have had numerous failures on their way to their gigantic successes. It's also important to understand it takes hard work, a never give up attitude, serious discipline, strong communication skills, and often a healthy dose of luck to be successful. Even with all these ingredients, success is never guaranteed. Entrepreneurs must be willing to accept a huge degree of risk and uncertainty, especially when they're reaching out for more than incremental gains. All the great entrepreneurs, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, the Paul Janssens, have experienced and worked through failure numerous times throughout their careers. What about successful entrepreneurs? We have in front of us, who just spoke, one of the successful entrepreneurs. They are a rare breed. There are many more entrepreneurs than there are successful entrepreneurs. Still more rare is the serial successful entrepreneur. Having one entrepreneurial success does not guarantee that other entrepreneurial efforts will be successful. How do you define success? How do you define it? Is it the creation of that prototype or the new drug? Is it getting an IND? Is it getting in Europe the CE mark? Is it a positive clinical study? It's probably different for all of us. Is it an approved NDA, the launch of a drug or device, or sales of the above? I can tell you that for a commercial entity, It's measured by tens of millions of dollars. We have many examples, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't had many new anesthesia drugs, of commercial failures. Fentanyl was a commercial failure in this country. So was remifentanil, and still is a commercial failure in this country, not in Europe, but in the United States. So these things impact the willingness of companies to take this risk, and individuals as well. Often original ideas are not successful until they are altered once, twice, 3 or 4 times. Often a friend, a relative, a colleague, or someone else suggests a new approach, a slightly different angle, and suddenly a brand new product is there. It has arrived. It works. Therefore, patience, flexibility, willingness to accept criticism, and open-mindedness are other traits that an entrepreneur needs to possess to be successful. There are some institutions, some countries, some cultures, some groups of people where it is considered shameful to fail. That is an attitude that stifles innovation and entrepreneurialism. Entrepreneurship does not flourish in an environment in which people think it is better to do nothing than it is to dare to do something great, even if you fail once or twice or more than that. According to Mr. Louis Platt, the former chairman of the Boeing Corporation, successful entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs act as an inspiration to others in another place. Entrepreneurship, he believes, can be taught, and it is learned through imitation and observation of a few key people and a few principles. It certainly was that for me. Successful entrepreneurs in one place act as an inspiration to others in another place. Boeing and according to Platt, Boeing and every other successful U.S. company is doing everything it can to stimulate innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship within its ranks. Same thoughts come from Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, when he says, what we are trying relentlessly to do is to get that small company speed and that small company mind, spirit, and body inside of our large company body. According to Platt, there are 4 key requirements for building an entrepreneurial culture. 1, bright, highly educated people and the colleges and universities that produce these people, plus a close and nurturing relationship between these tech-minded entrepreneurs and people in academia. 2, a source of money that is patient, daring, not needing any return in the short term, but looking for a huge return in the long term. 3, an environment in which people celebrate success with all their heart, and yet they are perfectly willing to accept failure, resolving not to quit, but to try, and to try again. And I know there are people in this audience that are in this process right now. Of course, when you look back to over 100 years ago and you think about the Wright brothers and how they mastered powered human flight, they failed many, many times before they finally succeeded. And 4, according to Platt, to develop an entrepreneurial culture, both within organizations and countries and societies, requires strong support from the top. Inside organizations and companies, the top people must be willing to accept failure and indeed expect it. If you don't fail enough times, you're not going to get the experience to succeed. Recently, many of the world's most successful movies have been coming from New Zealand. Why has that been happening? According to Ruth Harley, the CEO of the New Zealand Film Commission, there are 7 keys to success. And look how similar they are to what Louis Platt said. 1, the courage, sorry. I can't go back, it seems. Well, I'm not able to go. Here it is. The courage to accept a high level of commercial and critical failure. Money provided not as a grant, but as investments. Creative freedom. Strong identity, the entrepreneurial spirit, the ability to think globally, and backing from the top. So finally, why are innovation and entrepreneurialism important in our specialty, in anesthesiology? Because they fuel our progress, growth, better ways of doing things, and the potential for success. They also produce value, positive excitement, enthusiasm, fun, and sometimes, if you're fortunate, even wealth. But we do have problems, and I'm worried about this in our medicine and our specialty of anesthesiology today. And I agree with Dr. Richard Gunderman, who's the Chancellor's professor at the University of Indiana, who says one problem today, particularly in our training programs, is the culture of conformity that grips our physicians in training. They are evaluated not by the quality of the new ideas they formulate, but by the degree to which they conform to competencies, guidelines, and policies. Physicians in training quickly learn that the way to earn high marks is to answer correctly the questions posed by their instructors, not by formulating their own questions. To move anesthesiology, in my opinion, and biomedical science in general, we need to replace the culture of conformity with one of inquiry. The ability to say, I think it can be done better, and I'm willing to give it a try. A related challenge concerns the attitude toward error. Because the consequences of mistakes are so dire for physicians, partly because of their career projection, but even more so for the health of patients, many young physicians develop a strong aversion to risk-taking. The imperative never to err places a premium on avoiding undertakings that could result in failure. And as a consequence, young physicians allow this prohibition against mistakes to prevent them from ever attempting bold ventures with the potential to make great gains. To foster innovation, we must focus on the degree to which physicians, and in our case, anesthesiologists, especially those that are young and in training, are inclined to check this, and are inclined to check the same boxes as their colleagues, instead to think outside the box, to think of better ways of doing things. Another challenge to innovation is rooted in the culture of control. The organizations that accredit medical education programs, including medical schools, residency programs, and CME, often base their evaluations on the degree to which they follow a single mold. They have to follow all these things to be accredited. Finally, residents in training get the message that their work is going to be assessed according to an assembly line, a model that emphasizes throughput, productivity, and revenue generation. That's what our hospital administrators are focused on, our vice presidents are focused on. They are told, in effect, to keep their noses to the grindstone and keep producing. In fact, however, innovation requires an outward look, a think outside the box, grounded in a diverse range of experiences. Instead of hunkering down at the workstation, physicians have to, in effect, walk around, think outside the box. How could it be? Not follow what is going on. I have a dream, and that dream is that the culture of control, the pressure to conform to a single model, the imperative never to risk a new idea for fear of making a mistake that I've been describing in our anesthesia training programs and in medical programs as a whole, is somewhat changed, at least moderates to a degree. That the entrepreneurial spirit that I have described and we've seen in Doug Raines and others in this room will someday in the near future permeate most, if not all, academic anesthesia programs in this country and also many departments in private practice. That almost every faculty and staff member will be involved in entrepreneurial type activities, either as an owner, an investor, or as part of their time being funded as a researcher in this. That this integration of business and academia with the inevitable collision of ideas and synergies will potentially result in hundreds of Dr. Raines', hundreds of successful anesthesia-created products and companies, and that the funding that will come out of these successes, out of the royalties and equities that they create, will virtually support all of the research that we need to have. And that anesthesia departments throughout our country will no longer be dependent upon, although they will certainly try to get federally sponsored NIH grants and other monies for research, but they will no longer really need these things. And that anesthesia departments in the future will be compared not only on the quality of their clinical care, their teaching, and their research, but also on the importance of numbers of new products and companies that they create, and the value of the royalties and equities that are then returned to their home institution. For it is far better to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by multiple failures, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the great twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. Thank you for your attention. Please. give it a...
Thank you. When you said that Remy Fentanyl, for example, was a failure in this country, what part do you think of the teaching in this problem? I mean, you have made us a lecture very interesting and high level, but don't you think that education and teaching at the basic level is also an important part of the future?
I absolutely do, but I'm concerned that we don't give those people, or we don't create an environment where people like many in the audience here are willing to take their ideas and run with them, and that our trainees are too cautious. I'm not suggesting that we should not be careful, but risk-taking is so important in innovation and entrepreneurialism. You've got to be willing to risk stuff, money, other things in order to step outside the bounds from time to time to try something new. And I think that I worry that because of the way our society is today, and part of it is the legal system where if you make a mistake, you can be severely penalized. I worry that that is going to interfere or hinder entrepreneurialism, because it takes a long time and a lot of effort. Again, you're going to hear this in the next talk as well.
Ted, really very inspirational talk, but I'm wondering if you can if you have an idea about how to create the system that you envision. And I want to just point out that conformity and giving the right answer is exactly what most medical schools require of to get admitted. And so it's inculturated into our residents from
from day one.
From kindergarten on,
well,
largely. So where do you start? Do you start? Early education, can medical school education address this need? And, I think of the research community, largely, the people in this room, applying for an NIH grant is a risk-taking endeavor. It is certainly not a high, any guarantee of success, and you're basically putting your ideas out there for evaluation. Now, it is a grant, once you get it, how much skin you have in the game, it's just your career after all. But what's the model that where would you change the model of training to make this happen?
I think the model for anesthesiologists starts with the ASA. And if I had some impact on the brain power of our society, I would say, let's ask our membership. There are 40 to 50,000 members. I would ask the membership to invest. I would say, why don't you invest, and we're going to have a group of people who are going to take your money and invest in entrepreneurial ideas, new products, new devices, new monitoring system that our young people are coming up with. You're going to hear one of these things right after me. Could we, if $1,000 was given by every ASA member, what is that? That's a huge huge amount of money, and a fraction of that, or some of that, would be people, a select committee would say, we're going to take this money and we're going to invest in some of our young people's ideas. And that is a way, I think, to stimulate entrepreneurialism and innovation.
Thank you. Let's move on. So, Randy Hickel. Thank you. Randy Hickel.